let's talk about a theory. It's one that's grounded in US history and driven by some pretty staggering economic numbers we're seeing today. It suggests our financial system could be heading for a major fundamental reset. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what that theory is, where it comes from, and why it's being discussed. This is a critical analysis, not financial advice. So, let's get into it. Okay, before we go any further, I need to be absolutely clear. Everything we're about to discuss is for educational purposes. It's an analysis of an economic theory, a look at historical events. This is not financial advice, it's not investment advice, and it's not legal advice. For any of your own decisions, please, you have to consult with licensed professionals. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the math problem that's driving this whole theory. Then we'll dive into the historical blueprint from the 1930s. After that, we'll see how that same blueprint could, theoretically, be applied today. And finally, we'll analyze what the implications could be. Before we can even begin to explore how a monetary reset could happen, we really need to understand why it's even part of the conversation. And that why? Well, it all starts with a very simple but very daunting mathematical problem. $35 trillion. That is the US national debt right now. And maybe even more shocking, it's growing by about $1 trillion every 100 days. Just let that sink in. The sheer scale of this number is the bedrock of this entire theory. And this is where the trajectory becomes really clear. The debt isn't just a big number, it's accelerating. The annual interest we pay on the debt is now over $1.1 trillion. That's more than the entire defense budget. But here's the real issue, the mathematical trap. When your debt grows faster than your economy is growing, you are, by definition, on an unsustainable path. So when a government finds itself in a corner like this, it really only has three theoretical ways out. Option 1, default. Just refuse to pay. That's politically impossible and would cause a global financial meltdown. Option 2, hyperinflate. Just print money to pay the debts, which destroys the currency for everyone. Or option 3, a monetary reset. A sort of controlled demolition and restructuring of the system. And if you look at history, when faced with these three awful choices, governments tend to pick option 3. And that third option, a reset, it isn't just some wild idea. It has happened, right here in the United States. To really get a handle on the modern theory, you have to go back and look at the blueprint that President Franklin D. Roosevelt created in 1933. FDR took 5 very methodical steps. First, he used the banking crisis of the Great Depression to declare a national emergency, which gave him sweeping executive powers. Second, through Executive Order 6102, he made it a crime for private citizens to own gold. Third, Americans were ordered to turn in their gold to the Federal Reserve. In return, they got $20.67 for every ounce. Fourth, and this is the key part, after the government collected all the gold, it immediately revalued it upward to $35 an ounce, a 69% jump. And just like that, step 5, the government's balance sheet looked magically healthier. So what was the result for the average person who followed the law? Well, they turned in their life savings in gold for about $20 an ounce. The very next day, the government declared that same ounce of gold was now worth $35. In a single act, the purchasing power of anyone who complied was cut by 41%. Overnight. And this quote just perfectly captures the whole mechanism. You see, while the effect was a massive transfer of wealth from the people to the government, on the books, legally, it was simply called monetary policy. All right, so that was the blueprint from 1933. The question now is, how could that same playbook be applied to the debt problem we face today, which is, of course, magnitudes larger? This is where we get into the modern reset theory. Now, just like in 1933, a modern reset would need a trigger, right? A national emergency to provide the political cover for such a drastic move. Theorists point to a few possibilities. It could be a sudden debt crisis, a major shock to the markets, or some geopolitical event that threatens the US dollar's dominance. One that gets mentioned a lot is the idea of the BRICS nations launching their own currency, possibly backed by gold, creating a direct challenge to the dollar. So, the modern theory maps out a 5-step plan that mirrors FDR's, just with updated tools. Step 1, declare an emergency, maybe using something like the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to control financial transactions. Step 2, instead of outright confiscation, which would be tough today, the government could just make private gold ownership impractical through, say, an 80 or 90% tax. Then comes the main event, a massive revaluation of the nation's gold reserves. Step 4, announce a new gold-backed currency at this much higher price. And finally, Step 5, use those newly devalued dollars to pay down the national debt. This chart really shows you the raw power of this idea. The US officially has about 261 million ounces of gold. At, let's say, $2,000 an ounce, it's worth a little over $500 billion on the books. But what if you revalue gold to $20,000 an ounce? All of a sudden, that same pile of gold is worth over $5.2 trillion. It's an accounting trick, but it's an accounting trick that creates enormous capacity to deal with the debt. So let's be crystal clear on the core mechanism here. This move isn't about making gold more valuable. It's about making each individual US dollar worth significantly less. By repegging the currency to gold at a 10 times higher price, you are performing a massive devaluation of the dollar. And when you devalue the dollar, you also devalue the real burden of all the debt that's priced in dollars. Okay, now that we understand the mechanism, let's analyze the consequences. Because a reset like this isn't some neutral event. It would instantly and brutally create a class of winners and a class of losers. It would trigger one of the biggest wealth transfers we've ever seen. The losers in this scenario are pretty clear. It's anyone holding their wealth in paper assets, cash in the bank, government bonds, fixed pensions. Your $100,000 savings account would still say $100,000, but its actual purchasing power might suddenly be closer to $10,000 or $20,000. The winners, those holding hard, tangible assets, things like physical gold, real estate, other commodities. And of course, the biggest winners are the debtors, chief among them the government itself, whose massive debt burden effectively shrinks. It is a direct transfer of wealth from savers to debtors. Now, of course, this is a theory, and it's important to look at the counter-arguments. Many economists argue the US can just keep borrowing. Others say confiscating gold, even through taxes, would be impossible today. And a lot of people just see gold as a relic that has no place in a modern economy. But proponents of the theory have rebuttals for each of these. They question how long creditors will keep lending, they point to the power of taxation, they note that countries like China and Russia are accumulating gold, and they remind us that these kinds of resets are never, ever announced ahead of time. So whether this exact scenario ever plays out or not, looking at history gives us some pretty timeless lessons. Number 1, when push comes to shove, governments will always prioritize their own survival over the value of your savings. 2, during currency devaluations, hard assets historically preserve wealth far better than paper assets do. And maybe most importantly, the number in your bank account is far less important than what that number can actually buy. Its purchasing power is everything. And I need to say this one last time, and I really mean it. This has been an analysis of an economic theory. We've looked at history to understand how our monetary system works. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Any decision you make about your own money is a conversation you need to have with a licensed professional who understands your specific situation. Look, whether this specific theory about a 2027 reset proves right or wrong, the underlying problem, the unsustainable math of our national debt, is very real. And what history shows us is that when financial systems reach a breaking point, they don't just quietly fade away, they get restructured. So the real question might not be if a reset of some kind happens, but when, and what form it will take. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. If you had the chance to ask a top official at the Federal Reserve one question about the long-term stability of the dollar, what would you ask?